The contest for the America's Cup is the oldest international yacht race in the world. When the Royal Sydney Yacht Squadron put in its first challenge, the Cup had been held by the New York Yacht Club for over 100 years. Alan Payne, a well-known naval architect, was commissioned to design a 12-metre worthy of representing Australia. From his drawing board came the plans for Gretel, the Challenger. Harold Halverson and Trevor Garland directed construction, and Trevor sailed in her. This then was the beginning of a sporting bid in a completely new field for Australia. Behind closed doors and shrouded in the utmost secrecy, Gretel began to take on her sleek lines. Here was a task for the best craftsmen in our land, a combination of the scientific skill of design wedded to the ability of talented hands. Ampol is proud that it was one of the Australian companies whose substantial financial support made the challenge possible. The America's Cup intrinsically is worth little, but to the holder it means sailing supremacy, a hallmark of the best there is. No wonder such a sporting nation as Australia was keen to add the old mug to other trophies on her mantelpiece. The tenders, Sarah and Offsider were also built by Halverson. Gretel's sails were another major requirement, and after cutting and machine stitching, there was still more meticulous finishing to be done by hand. Peter Cole and Joe Pierce were two of the specialists with the job of completing headboards, bolt ropes, and so on. Rarely was any lady's wardrobe so carefully completed. Then came the time for training, and before each outing a hand was sent aloft the 90-foot mast to check the gear. As there was no other 12-metre yacht in Australian waters, the speedy Vim was chartered from the United States as a trial horse. With the Challenger shipshape and ready to go, the two beautiful yachts raced against each other off Sydney Heads, with the men aboard from whom the final crew and skipper would be picked. In 1958, Vim very narrowly failed to earn the right to sail in the America's Cup against the British Challenger Scepter. The American defender Columbia was the victor that year to once again retain the coveted cup. But Vim was a proven thoroughbred, and certainly a worthy choice to encourage the best from Gretel. For the prospective members of the Challenger's crew, this was a seagoing schoolroom. Quick to adapt themselves to the spirit of teamwork, their main problem was to master the distinct requirements of each man in sailing a 12-metre. On Gretel, mainsails, jibs and spinnakers were constantly changed to try out the efficiency of the new sails and the best combinations for different wind strengths. There was much to learn, and time was becoming shorter. On the last day of training, it blew pretty hard, and to avoid the risk of damaging gear, headsails were taken in and the yachts raced for home under mainsails only. With Jock Sturrock at the helm, Gretel proved an easy winner. Thus, on an optimistic note, the first phase of our challenge was closed. Then America bound. Vim and the tenders were loaded first, followed by the Prima Donna. Special cradles were welded to the decks, and certainly no egg was ever more carefully handled. Nevertheless, Alan Payne looked very worried until the last lashing was made fast and the wedges hammered home. Naturally, we were proud to proclaim she was Australian-made. At Newport, Rhode Island, a new dawn in more ways than one. For the first time, Down Under was represented in what was for us a new field of sporting endeavour. This was the time of critical final preparations, with the first race of the series only weeks away. In the Atlantic off Newport, a series of tuning-up trials between Vim and the Challenger. Vim, sailing on the right, was on home waters again, acting perhaps not only as a pacemaker but guide as well. It has been said many times, with no offense intended to fair sex, that getting to know a boat is a little like getting to know a woman. It is perhaps also true that the more beautiful they are, the more mysterious. Men who sail 12 meters must try to find all the answers. They must learn what their beautiful lady will do or won't do. As a result of getting to know this beautiful lady, a number of changes were made to further coax Gretel to give of her best. The original cockpit arrangement was altered. The mast re-stepped further forward. These were among other things which could only be learned by constant training. Syndicate members also kept a watch on Our Lady. There was admiration for the hard-working ways of the crews both ashore and at sea. Everywhere, hospitable doors were open to the Aussies. An atmosphere prevailed traditional to this great sport. Then, the day all had worked for, and the greatest fleet ever to watch an America's Cup contest crowds the course. So great is their enthusiasm that the start is delayed. Finally, the two yachts are on their way. It's a splendid start, and in the early stages, Gretel, nearest camera, holds her highly rated opponent Weatherly. But despite the efforts of her crew, the Australian sloop is no match for the American in the windward work. However, Gretel surprises the experts by moving well in light breezes, as it was believed she would perform better in heavier conditions. Sturrock at the helm and the crew, although new to 12-meter racing, handle their charge with a great show of confidence. Approaching the finish of the 24-mile course, Weatherly has a commanding lead. Skippered by Bus Mosbacher, acknowledged as the world's best in this type of competition, Weatherly crosses the line nearly 4 minutes in front. A win to the defenders in the first race of a best-of-7 series. A stiff breeze blowing on the day of the second race, and at the start, Sturrock out-generals Mosbacher, who is renowned for his bustling tactics in these conditions. Gretel momentarily holds a slight advantage, but Weatherly is not to be caught napping, and it's soon apparent this is to be a hard-fought duel. Rough, wet going, the kind that puts a strain on men, gear and sails, but the Challenger is going well. Weatherly is forced to defend her lead almost throughout, and coming nearer the last mark, there are only seconds between the two boats. At the last buoy, Weatherly is the first to turn, but it's neck and neck, Gretel relentlessly riding down her opponent's wake. And now a tactical triumph for Sturrock as he rounds the Navy tug in exactly the right position and is first to break out Gretel's big white spinnaker. Weatherly's red kite is slow to fill out, and the crew appear to hold it in a little tight. But the Australians let theirs go high and wide to drink up the wind on this, the vital last leg. Running for the line, Weatherly maintains her slight advantage. Crowds on the following spectator fleet begin to sense that an upset is inevitable as Gretel guns along in the 25-knot wind. She's moving up on Weatherly, gradually bridging the gap. Shouts of encouragement are lost, but even if Gretel's crew didn't hear, they were shouting exultantly themselves. Gretel, catching long, driving waves like a surfboard back home, floods level with the defender and then takes the lead. The white spinnaker moves out from behind the red, and for the first time in 28 years, a challenger is to win one race of the series. For Australia, proud pictures for the world to see. As to the sounds of hooters and horns, Gretel goes on to record the fastest time ever by a 12-meter in the Cup. Gretel crosses the finishing line 47 seconds ahead, and the series is now 1-all. With the sweet taste of victory to urge them on, Sturrock and his men take advantage of the respite between races to thoroughly check their boats. But the third race proves to be somewhat of an anticlimax. The breeze can only be described as a yachtsman's nightmare. The sea, slow and oily. Yet again, Sturrock humbles Mosbacher at the start, crossing the line ahead and in the favored windward position. A fleeting triumph for the challenger, however, for only minutes after the start, Weatherly reverses the position. From here to the first mark, it's a relentless duel of tacking back and forth to take advantage of every ghostly breath of wind. Gretel loses an alarming 2 minutes in the encounter. Weatherly breaks out a blue and white spinnaker, and with the situation under control, holds a commanding lead. Mosbacher is making every effort to avenge the second race defeat. There's Gretel's almost identical blue and white spinnaker, but even though the Australian boat closes the gap in the latter stages, their hopes of winning are forlorn. At one stage, she is left wallowing with no breeze in her sails, 23 minutes astern. It's Weatherly's race by a wide margin. With the series 2-1 in America's favor, the fourth race, and although Gretel here appears to get the best of the start, she's really on the wrong side. Weather conditions are not completely suitable to her, with only a slight breeze up to around 15 knots. But nevertheless, the race is to prove another thriller. Both crews are really on their mettle, the Americans now fully realizing the strong threat the challengers present to their supremacy. With the lessons learned from previous encounters, the Australians show they mean business, and at this stage hold a narrow advantage. The crew are working well under Sturrock, whose capable leadership has blown the myth of an invincible Mosbacher. From a blimp over the course, Gretel presents a picture to delight the eyes of all who love sails and the sea. It's a parade of changing fortunes, with Weatherly now the leader. Throughout the world, this was front-page news, but particularly back home, the man in the street felt Gretel was his very own and snapped up every snippet of information about her progress. Can she do it? Of course she'll win. And what's more, when we get that cup down under, they'll have a job getting it back. Optimism was riding high, but it wasn't our day, and the American boat proved too good. Even so, it was the closest finish in the long history of the race. The score was now 3-1. The next race could decide the issue. Race 5, and from the starter's gun, Weatherly scuds into the coveted windward position to open up an early lead. The start had been delayed for an hour because of vagaries of the breeze, but they were away into a meager 9 knots. Hardly Gretel weather, but it was to build up to 16 knots. Highlight of many of the encounters were the tacking duels, where a split-second miscalculation could lose valuable leeway. Here, Sturrock and Mosbacher, both masters of the art, turn on a thrilling duel for position. Approaching the mark, Weatherly holds a comfortable margin, and on going around opens up a spinnaker which sends her even further ahead. Gretel comes up to the buoy, and in a moment a major setback. At Stark's command, the crew set a brand new, untested red, white and blue spinnaker. It fails to draw properly. Weatherly is on a spanking run to the leeward mark, inexorably increasing her lead. Despite the at times disconcerting advantage held by Weatherly, Gretel's crew worked like demons, and at one stage of this race, her backstay is hauled so tight as to bend her mast, she slices to within 200 yards of the leader. After the costly failure of the new red, white and blue spinnaker, Stark takes no chances and reverts to the familiar blue and white kite. But in the end, the American sloop is well clear to come home an easy winner. It's a decisive victory which knocks out Australia's chances for the series. But Blue Water men will long remember that it was the Aussies who put a real scare into the holders of the America's Cup. Gretel comes in to applause that goes round the yachting world, and she enters a place in 12-meter history reserved for a valiant few. Yet another spinnaker in red and white bellies in the breeze, witness to Jock Stark's game attempt to try all out for a win. Many have said a miscalculation at the first weather mark cost her the race. Be that as it may, it's easy to be wise after an event, so let's write this series off to experience. After all, to attempt and nearly succeed in taking the world's top yachting trophy at the first try is pretty ambitious. And of course, there'll certainly be another time. As one of the companies which made the challenge possible, AMPOL joins with the whole of Australia in saluting Gretel and her crew.